Good afternoon, just on time, the music has come to a stop, the rehearsal for Alicia below us. So welcome everybody to the final couple sessions here at RSA 2024. And I have the pleasure of introducing the panel today with the topic, Small Changes, Big Impact, Securing Our World Through Public Education. And our moderator, Nicole, on the end, panelist Elena Clark, Assistant Director of Stakeholder Engagement at CISA and Cybersecurity, Infrastructure and Agency. And Nicole Wong is Principal at N. Wong Strategies. Camille Stewart Gloucester, former Deputy National Director, Cyber Director, Technology, Ecosystem Security, and the White House. And Rachel Tabak, CEO at Social Proof Security. Thank you very much, and give a big round of applause.
Well, thank you, everyone. I had no idea we were going to have a soundtrack to our panel, but apparently Alicia Keys is sound testing downstairs, so we get to have her music go along with all of what we're going to talk about today. I appreciate everyone being here this afternoon, and I'm so pleased to be able to work with this panel. My name is Nicole Wong. I served as the Deputy U.S. CTO in the Obama administration, and I am currently serving on the CISA Cybersecurity Advisory Committee, and very pleased to have worked with them for the last couple of years. Today, I have the privilege of moderating an outstanding panel of strong advocates for cybersecurity education. And I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. But I wanted to frame this conversation and also put out a teaser. There's a long history of public service announcements in this country where we've tried to raise awareness, change habits, catalyze change, and the most successful of them are born in this alchemy of effective law and leadership and an undeniable urgency. And the message delivered in that moment sticks in our minds. So you might remember Keep America Beautiful, or Friends Don't Let Friends Drive Drunk, or A Mind is a Terrible Thing to Waste. Cybersecurity is clearly in one of those moments. And so I'm pleased to be able to introduce to you this assembly of experts who are working to raise awareness across government, the private sector, and critically with individuals. They're not only equipping people with the tools for protecting themselves, they're also engaged in critical efforts such as cyber civil defense and building the next generation of cyber professionals. And the teaser is at the end of this panel, we're going to launch for your viewing the new CISA public service announcement that will be introduced by all of them. So to start, I want to pose this question to all of you. Can you briefly describe how you got into the cybersecurity profession and specifically how you approach public education in your current roles?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, first of all, Nicole and Rachel and Camille. It is such an honor and a pleasure to be here talking about this topic. This has been a passion of mine. So I've been with the Department of Homeland Security for almost 20 years, and I've always been on the voluntary partnership side of things. So really trying to find ways to bring individuals and communities and different state and local government entities or international partners or critical infrastructure partners into our agencies and our department to kind of break down that bureaucracy and just make it easier to navigate. We're a service delivery agency, and so being able to really help individuals. And so I had the opportunity to come to CISA when it was stood up 5 years ago, and so jumped at that opportunity. And then when the stakeholder engagement division, the head of it came open, it seemed so natural because I then had the opportunity to really engage with the critical infrastructure partners and international nonprofit, and it just fit really well with kind of my passion and just what I absolutely love to do. And public awareness and education fits into my role because I help to lead the agency's Cybersecurity Awareness Month efforts, which are in October. And so that's where this idea came. We need to have something a little bit more enduring, not just for the month of October, but throughout the year. And so that's where this idea of kind of a year-long enduring public awareness program came from.
I love that. Oh, looks like I mic'd up. You can go. So hello, Joyce Foster. I got into cybersecurity like that. And so I grew up around technology my entire life and recognized that how technology shows up in the lives of people. And so it's really important. And after law school was recruited to a cybersecurity company where I assisted operational centers, legal work, and put on the forefront figuring out how
to secure organizations in the advent of social media. That work, the work I did at Google and the Department of Homeland Security and Deloitte after that, and even on the Hill, really showed me how important it was that people understood how technology was showing up in their lives and how the people part of the dynamic was under considered, under invested in. And we often try to find technical mitigations or think about how the policy and the process can mitigate cyber risk and just kind of blame people for being the weakest link in cyber. And I actually think that's pretty problematic because as the security practitioners, it is our job to consider how people actually use technology and the context in which it operates. And that led me to create organizations that really helped get new diverse talent into cyber and into technical spaces, and to understand and advocate for the fact that we really needed to consider the people dynamic. And so when I went to the White House, part of my portfolio was focused on cyber workforce and led the drafting of the National Cyber Workforce and Education Strategy. And that balances the national cybersecurity strategy's push towards moving the burden of cybersecurity to the big players with a recognition that there is going to be residual risk. And as individuals, we should own and be empowered in our technology use such that we can promote security in our lives and make choices about our digital safety as we do for our physical safety. And so promulgating cyber skills is a part of that, and PSAs, public education, is a huge way to engage the public and to start a dialogue.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rachel Toback. I'm so excited to be here. So I actually got my start in teaching. I taught for 7 years. I taught children with disabilities, and a huge part of my learnings to get into cybersecurity actually were born from that experience. Getting an idea of how do we make sure that folks, young folks particularly, understand the things that they need to understand and that we meet them where they're at. When I moved into cybersecurity as an ethical hacker, and then finally as a CEO of Social Proof Security, my aim there is really just using the same skills as a teacher, but leveraging them for public service education. So doing things like live hacking demonstrations with CNN or 60 Minutes to show people in a viral way what it looks like when we're hacking and what they can do to protect against those specific types of attacks. So really what I will talk about a lot today is meeting people where they're at and talking through how to get people excited and interested in viral content as it relates to cybersecurity.
Those are such great examples. Let me ask a question which goes more to audience. So the public in public awareness is a really broad swath of people, right? Like from not only individuals, but developers and the public sector and the private sector. And then even within individuals, you're talking kids to seniors, across demographics, across different ranges of technical knowledge. So my question is, how do you think about reaching those folks in different communities and capacities? And how do you think about, in particular, prioritizing the message and the audience?
So happy to jump in first. So on this one, it's been a big priority of ours as we kind of think through the different groups. And I would say at CISA, we've been really trying to reach out to kind of non-traditional partners. So I had the great opportunity to do a couple Facebook's lives with AARP. So I mean, that's a great opportunity to just reach an audience we would not normally reach. My parents actually got to watch one of them. And it was phenomenal because at the end they're like, we're not really sure what you said, but we updated the software in our phone. And I was like, that's fantastic. We got, at least I know 2 people updated their software after that. So I'm like, we're making, some changes here. So that's just one group that we're working with. But Girl Scouts, we're also doing a lot of work with the Boys and Girls Club of America, having an opportunity to work with them and their CISOs from across the country to help better protect against the data that they have, but then also working with them to see what we can do with the children as well. So we're really trying to figure out the different types of areas that there are gaps that we need to really be reaching into and introducing ourselves. And as far as the public awareness program and kind of how we developed it in thinking about reaching these different audiences, we took a very data-driven approach in developing the program and developing personas and understanding how individuals receive information through different channels and how would we have the most impact. And we worked with the nonprofit community, we worked with chief marketing officers, and so it was really fun to see the approach that we took was validated by some major entities that do work in this space. And so we took the approach of targeting audiences in the 26 to 58 age range because they will have the most ability to impact those and influence those older than them, the older adults, or children young adults, sorry, not children, young adults down to children. And so that's why a lot of the content that we are developing is really targeting that age group right now.
I'm really glad to hear you say that you are reaching out to nonprofit communities, and we were doing that at the White House as well. Reaching into organizations that are already in the communities that you seek to speak to is actually a really great way to localize and individualize the conversation in a way that resonates with people, because they'll know how to translate that information and already have ties into those communities. And so the more that you can do that, that's a great way. And not everyone's receptive to every messenger. And so sometimes government will resonate with some communities and sometimes it won't resonate with others. Some of the best ways to engage new communities as well, or different communities, is to have spokespeople who represent those communities and to engage leaders and demonstrate how folks can rise in the ranks in this space. And then also have conversations in ways that really show people how these things show up in their everyday lives. One of the things I love about Rachel's viral content is that it really does show people, this is what's happening in my life every day. And so much about technology use is a daily, moment by moment thing that we all do. You're using your phones, you're on your laptop for school or your iPad. Your kids are using it from the moment almost they're born. But we don't have the conversation in a way that makes people feel like the thing that we are talking about when we talk about cybersecurity is the thing that they carry with them every day. The conversation has traditionally felt very exclusionary, or people get overwhelmed at the concept. But when you say, when you can find your friends, no matter where they are, you use their geolocation on social media, or you track, the events, or you use whatever those methods are, that's cyber threat intelligence. That's a career in cybersecurity. And you really make the conversation such that people can see how it's showing up for them. It's a really good tool.
Thanks for the kind words, Camille. Yeah, one of the coolest things that I have noticed in kind of the PSA cybersecurity world is that if you meet people on the apps that they're already using with the types of videos or content that they're already consuming, they are so much more likely to get what you're talking about. So an example of this is, do you remember in 2021, sea shanties were going viral all over the internet, specifically on TikTok? Many people in the audience are like, yes, and then others are like, no, I'm not on TikTok. Well, they were going majorly viral. And so if you asked any child, any young person who was on TikTok at that time, they'd say sea shanties is what everybody's talking about. So I'm thinking to myself, how do we reach people? So I sung a sea shanty about InfoSec, literally singing in the form of a sea shanty about password managers and multi-factor authentication, thinking maybe people will watch this kind of like a Hail Mary, who knows, right? It got 400,000 views within 2 days. People consumed, thank you. Yeah. People consumed that content. When we meet people where they're at, on the apps that they're at, they will consume the content because it's interesting and it matches what we're talking about. So started to take that approach within our security awareness training videos, which is so cool that SZA is now doing the cyber schoolhouse rock, because I do like rock and alt rock and pop for my security awareness training videos, because that's the type of content that people are excited about. That's what they're consuming, music videos on their YouTube or TikTok or Instagram Reels. So trying to make the content viral and interesting is so essential, and I love that we're all on the same page about that.
I'm not saying we should get a sea shanty before this is over, but I'm just going to put that out.
You want me to sing right now? Yeah.
So tell
We
me,
have music in the next one. So
we have music. What for you, this is for all of you, what are the greatest challenges that you're seeing in educating the general public about cybersecurity? And then I think this might be a slightly different question, which is what specific cybersecurity risks are really difficult to communicate?
So I'll start on this one, and it was actually a word that Camille used, and it's something that I've been using to describe this program, is empowerment. I think that's the biggest challenge, is empowering, and that's what we're focusing this program on, empowering individuals that they can take cybersecurity into their own hands to better protect themselves. And so we really want to be able to have that behavioral change with individuals. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is a lot of individuals or small and medium businesses are struggling because they're not a cybersecurity expert. I'm sure we all have that one person in the family that we call to say, how do I do this? I'm having an issue. Or you're going to the folks in your company to ask them for assistance. And so we really want, I think that's the biggest challenge, is really trying to get at the core of empowering, which is why we're trying to create viral PSAs that connect with individuals so that they see themselves in it. And which is why we have, from the first PSA we launched to the second one, some of the characters continuing in through. So we're trying to create a theme and a family that everybody is connecting to.
I think some of the really big challenges that I've encountered are communicating to people what their risk is. So have you ever had a conversation with somebody about cybersecurity and they say, I have nothing to hide. I'm not worried about it. Yeah, maybe I reuse my passwords. I have nothing to hide. I don't care about that stuff. It's a throwaway account. I'm seeing a lot of nodding. Most people are really, really poor at understanding their threat model. So if we can bring it to them and say something like, you know how you have that Instagram account for your dog and the sweaters that you knit and it has 50,000 followers? And the person's like, yeah. It's like, what if you lost that? Like overnight, you just never got it and somebody else is pretending to be you for the rest of all time. They're like, oh, that would really stink. That would be really awful. Or you say something like, you know how you just made $10,000? You just saved that up over many years babysitting and being a nanny? Wouldn't that stink if you lost access to that because you reused your password on your bank account and you didn't have multi-factor authentication on? It's really giving folks the example of, what do I have in my life that I could lose? Maybe you don't really care if you lose your Neopets account, right? Because you reuse that password and who cares, right? Not a big deal. But maybe you do care a lot about losing access to your money or your Instagram or your TikTok following. Really showing those examples, meeting people where they're at, and walking through that is so important, which is what I really try to bring home with my live hacking demonstrations is, here are all the things you have to lose, even if you think you don't have anything to lose.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just piggyback off both of those. Individualizing and then empowering people on the back end of that is the perfect combination. If people don't understand how it shows up in their lives, they won't relate to it, particularly because the conversations we've had in the past are so scary. Cybersecurity issues are national security issues. They're organizational issues, and people feel like they are not the ones that can mitigate cyber risk. They're not thinking about it in the same ways that they think about their physical safety, when quite frankly, there are a lot of very small things that they could do to mitigate a lot of risk. And you all know that, so I won't go through them because this is not that audience. But pairing that individualization with those empowering tactics and sometimes relating them to things that people understand, right? I often talk about like multi-factor authentication, like the deadbolt on your door. Do you leave your front door open? No. Is locking the deadbolt as well as the main lock going to stop a really, really determined thief? No. Is that friction helpful to make sure any and everybody doesn't walk in your front door and steal your TV? Yes. And so the extra 2 seconds to lock your deadbolt or the extra 2 seconds to turn on MFA is so worth it. The return is there. And usually when I talk to people about it in that context, they can get behind it, right? Like the thought of losing all my money paired with the extra 5 seconds to turn on MFA, cost-benefit analysis works out in my favor. And so we just have to have the conversation in a way that people can relate to.
Yeah, and people get super nihilistic about stuff, right? Like Camille is saying, sometimes people are like, they feel like they've lost all their agency about cybersecurity. Like, there's nothing I can do about it. At this point, if they're gonna hack me, they're gonna hack me. You've probably heard people say that, when in reality, if you just don't reuse that password and you turn on even SMS two-factor, you're gonna block, 75% of bot-based attacks according to Google's research in 2019? So yeah, just take those little extra steps to make it more annoying.
Rachel, I wanted to pick up, because you had like a laundry list of here's all the scary things that will happen. From your vantage point, what are the biggest threats that you are seeing as it relates to the average person's cybersecurity safety?
Yeah. So the average person with like an average threat model, we'll just say like a person that you went to college with and you see them at your bar and they're like, oh, you work in cybersecurity, what should I keep in mind? That person who doesn't have a massive following on Twitch or Instagram or what have you, I would say average threat model, they're likely to just get attacked because they reuse their password and it shows up in a breach, right? I can find most people's passwords. I can usually find about 13 passwords per email address for most individuals within a few seconds on Dhashed, which is a data breach repository. So just walking through, do you use the same password or very slightly remix a password? Yeah. Okay, well, if your movie streaming site gets hacked and you use that for your bank or your mortgage or whatever else, I can now get into those accounts. And they're like, oh, got it. And then, do you have multi-factor authentication on? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, here's how you turn it on. So yeah, it's like being the world's IT support, kind of. And it's always going to be the same stuff, right? Password management, multi-factor authentication, understanding your threat model.
Camille, maybe you could talk about a little bit how the PSAs and other efforts to engage individuals aligned with your work on the National Cybersecurity Workforce and Education Strategy.
Yeah, so the strategy really lays out a plan for how we have the workforce to meet all the technological demands of our evolving digital landscape. Whether it's AI coming or quantum, there's going to be new skills needed as time goes on. But one of the things it recognizes is the fact that for everyone to engage in this economy of jobs, or to just be a thoughtful technology user, there are a set of skills that we need to start teaching folks. And cyber skills should go beyond digital literacy. We've all heard about that. It's the ability to turn it off and on and use it. But cyber skills really has digital literacy, computational literacy, the ability to understand how the choices you're making impact you, your family, your safety, your privacy, and then digital resilience, the ability to change with the technology changes, right? To adapt to a new technology, whether it's Instagram last week and TikTok next week and then something else the next week. And that is what's most relevant here, is that we have to start having a conversation about those skills in context, and PSAs are a great intro to that, or a great reinforcement, because if folks have those skills, they're making those choices that we're talking about. That computational literacy is the recognition that like, oh, if I turn on MFA, then somebody is less likely to steal all my money or to take my Twitch account that has a bunch of followers. And so this is a really great complement, because that meeting people where they are, that individualizing the conversation is a necessary conduit to having the kitchen table conversations we need to have and getting cyber skills in schools at all levels.
Thank you. Okay, so because no one can leave the building without mentioning AI, can you guys address, like, how has AI changed hacking and defending for public and private institutions, and how do we communicate about those attacks to just everyday folks in the world about what it means for them?
I can take a stab at that first. So I did a 60 Minutes AI live hacking demonstration. And if you didn't get a chance to see it, basically what I did is I used AI to voice clone Sharon Alfonsi, the correspondent for 60 Minutes, and I voice cloned her to her assistant, Elizabeth. I then asked Elizabeth for Sharon's passport number, and I was able to get it within a few seconds. Helping people understand that it's not just possible to use AI for a voice clone, but it's likely and quite easy is really, really useful. So in addition to me doing that and demonstrating just how possible and easy it was, 60 Minutes did a great job in their PSA actually talking to people who have fallen for these attacks, because we need to hear it from the source, right? Where people are like, I heard my grandson say that he got into a car accident and he needed $1,500 and I just went ahead and sent it. I heard my nephew say that he got into an altercation and now he needs to be bailed out for $2,500. So I think it's really interesting so people can understand the social engineering scam is the same. Like the social engineering and the way that we trick people hasn't really evolved that much. The capabilities just make it easier to make it more tricky and a little harder to find. So making sure that we keep it relevant for folks, make it easy for them to understand that, yes, I can easily AI voice clone you. That doesn't mean that you're doomed. So what do we do about it? We've got to use multiple methods of communication to confirm people are who they say they are. You could have something like a family password that you use to confirm in an emergency. There are a lot of small, easy things you could do, similar to our PSA communication for MFA and password management, that you don't need to freak out and get nihilistic about it saying, well, there's nothing I could do, so who cares? I think the way that we communicate AI, so it's not just 100% scary all the time with AI deepfakes, is really important. Bring it back down to earth. What do we do now? Yeah.
And I think an important component of what Rachel just said is she paired an understanding of the threat with the solution. Right. Too often we talk about what might happen, oh, AI voice cloning, oh, this deep fake video, but we don't tell people how to protect themselves, how to identify whether or not they are being targeted, or what ways to work around and think about that second factor. In this case is calling your nephew to make sure that he really just called you to ask you for $1,500 because he's never done that before. And really thinking about the solutions in tandem with identifying the problem space. The other part of AI that I'll just address quickly is a lot of people are afraid of how it is going to take away their jobs and change the way they live. And there's this interesting dynamic right now where there's a lot of trust in AI for certain things, right? I love ChatGPT, but I'm terrified that AI is going to take away my job. That creates this weird dynamic where people feel very uneasy, even as they trust certain manifestations of AI, but they feel very insecure in their professional lives. And I think one of the things that should be a part of these conversations as we talk about PSAs is, yes, protecting yourself, but also really the realities of how the job market will change and what the opportunities are for folks to benefit from the changes that will come. The opportunities for companies to reinforce that people still need to be a part of a workflow, but even if we realize some productivity and some efficiencies, that there is a gain on both sides. Because folks will appreciate their jobs more if all the rote, boring tasks can be automated more, and they get to focus in on the things that are more interesting.
Elena, you mentioned your work with PSAs at CISA. Can you give a little background about how PSAs came to be and how they might be helping with educating the public on safety online?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was one thing when Jenny Schley came in as the director. I pitched to her. I was like, we need an enduring cybersecurity awareness program. And Camille, I think you said it. You've been like setting me up for a couple things. Or Rachel, you said, I can't remember. But we know what to do on the physical side. But on the cybersecurity side, individuals, small and medium businesses, families, they don't know what to do. And so I was like, Jen, we really need to create an enduring cybersecurity awareness program. And so that was the start of the conversation day one when she came in. And then Congress supported us and gave us funding to actually create this cybersecurity enduring public awareness program. And so again, as I mentioned earlier, we took a lot of time working with the nonprofit community, with industry partners to create this together. We were very thoughtful from a brand identity statement that we use with it, to the logo, making sure that it resonated. It's not the CISA logo, it's a different logo. That's very purposeful so that, again, we're a government and meeting people where they are, they might not always want that CISA logo on their things. So being very thoughtful about the approach that we took, the look and feel, we wanted it to be very inviting to individuals as well. And so then last September, we launched Secure Our World. We did this with Google, Microsoft, MasterCard, National Cybersecurity Alliance, the Global Cybersecurity Alliance, and IST. So it was amazing to see these major companies and nonprofits partner with us on launch day. And then we had ad buys running nationwide. So I always heard it in my supermarket. I don't know if others did at Safeway. I heard somebody at the conference actually heard it as well there. But we had it on TV, we had it on radio, airports. It was just fantastic kind of where it was. And then this year has been amazing to see our industry partners. The NFL said, we're going to partner with you, and we're not just going to partner with you, it's going to be at the Super Bowl. So within 4 months of launching, we had this public awareness program at the Super Bowl, in the NFL experience, in the stadium on game day, at no cost to us. And so it was just amazing to see the NFL step up and say, this is a huge issue, we have a big audience, and we're going to partner with you. A couple weeks ago, we had it on the NASDAQ Tower in Times Square, and we have a collaboration right now with Walmart. So if you shop in Walmart, right now you'll hear it on the radio. And so we are so excited about the potential that this has. We want it to truly take off nationally. We're talking with the international community as well to get them on board with it. So this is, as I've been saying, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. That we want this to be with us for the long term. So we are very excited with kind of where it's going. And I had shared with you guys a story. This past weekend, I was bringing my son to one of his activities, and we were running late, and I was like, we gotta get the car moving, we gotta go, get buckled up. And as I'm like rolling out of the driveway, like foot off the brake, he's yelling at me that he's not buckled in. And then at the end of the activity, we get back in the car, and he then starts getting mad at me again because of what I did before. And he's like, you cannot move the car like you did before. I have to be buckled in. And he's only 6 years old. And so it just resonated with me because that's where we want Secure Our World to go. That's where we want cyber public awareness and education to go. We want it to be ingrained in what we do. He doesn't understand the whole concept of a seatbelt in a car and an accident. He just knows he has to be in a car with a seatbelt on. And that's where we need to take cyber public awareness. And that's where we want this program to go.
Mm-hmm. Something that I try to always echo is kind of like Jan Easterly and Bob Lord's thoughts about, can you imagine if when you used a website, if it basically yelled at you, just like if you were in a car without a seatbelt on, if you didn't have MFA on or you were reusing your password? Can you imagine if at the top of the website it said like, you do not have multi-factor authentication on, you are at risk for being hacked, right? That would be so interesting. And I really think it's cool how the public and private partnerships that you've worked with CISA are kind of starting to bleed into the tech world and the tech space. So we might even see in a period of time the websites that we use and rely on and that our children use and rely on start to yell at them the same way the car does when the seatbelt is not buckled in. That would be really interesting. Of course, we don't want it to yell. We want it to be like gently, hello, this is an issue and it's kind of a risk. But I think it's cool, and I think we're starting to see that, that impact with the public and private partnerships from CISA.
Absolutely.
That is such a great success story. For Camille and Rachel, maybe do you have favorite PSAs that you've worked on or been around and seen success as well?
In the cyberspace, did you all see the commercial from, I think it was Amazon and NCA with Tessa Thompson and Michael B. Jordan, and they were like cyber superheroes? It was great. It was like the Marvel version of cybersecurity. And I just thought that was such a relatable thing that folks, for the first time, because so many people are obsessed with Marvel characters and superheroes in one way or another, to think about our cyber defenders as superheroes and see it with some of the biggest stars that there are. And so that was one of my favorites.
I love that one. Mm-hmm. I've gotten to work on a lot of really cool cybersecurity PSAs, working with CISA and doing some really fun stuff with Jen Easterly was a huge highlight, working with Yubico to walk through how the Uber and Twitter hack happened and actually do a full reenactment with that. That was really fun. I think the one that has probably made the biggest impact is the one that I did with CNN and Donny O'Sullivan, where I called up his service providers, and I actually ended up putting him in the middle seat in the back of a plane. I'm seeing some nodding heads, so maybe some of you have seen this one. That one, for whatever reason, really struck a nerve with people. Like, oh my gosh, I could be moved to the middle seat in the back of a plane. I had no idea that was going to be possible. And I think that really just speaks to speaking the people's language, like what's interesting to people? What are people worried about? What do they care about? They care about having access to their coffee points to get that free coffee at the end of the month. They don't want to lose all that. They want to make sure that their companies keep them safe and verify identity appropriately so that a random rogue person that you have beef with can't put you in the middle seat on in the back of the plane for 5 hours on the way home from Vegas, right? These things matter to people. And so if we can bring real examples, it's going to go pretty viral. And that one people still talk about to me to this day. I'm like, wow, it has some staying power. I think it's from 2018.
Okay, so I'm not going to ask Elena to sort of evaluate herself. So Camille and Rachel, can you give me your thoughts on how are you seeing efforts like Secure Our World move the needle on cybersecurity education? And then also from your vantage points, what more should be done by government and by the private sector?
Yeah, to the point earlier about companies really embracing this concept, you've seen some companies, they're not blaring it on websites, but they're turning on multi-factor authentication by default. Yep, exactly. And when I was at Google, that was one of the things that we pushed out. The thing about that, though, I was thinking as we were sitting up here, is I actually wish they publicized it a little bit more. Yeah. They talk about it, but they don't publicize it quite a bit. I think the thing that public service announcements does, this public education piece, is that it makes people aware of the changes the technology is making on your behalf when we are doing these mitigations. And that active knowledge starts the brain working. And so I think that's what's really important about PSAs. I think the collaborations that are coming out of CISA, but also the White House is doing a lot of ecosystem partnerships that include the departments and agencies, but also include state and local government and academia and companies and nonprofits to have a more holistic conversation in communities. There's a roadshow going on right now to implement the strategy that really brings it in context in communities and talks about how in this specific area, what are the employers, what are their needs, how do we have this conversation at home, and that dialogue is spurred by a lot of PSAs and public education. And so I think having multifaceted programs that come to people where they are, that are blasting on the internet, that are blasting on TV, that kind of multimodal engagement is really, really helpful.
Something that I think is really interesting, and I talk about this a lot, is that CISA can blast the Secure Our World message to everywhere, at the Super Bowl, in the supermarket, everywhere that you go. But if the companies, the private companies that we rely on with our data to keep us secure, if they don't take the steps and actions to protect us, we're still not going to reach the goals that we want to reach. So what I would hope to do over time is to see even more of the public and private partnerships focusing on how the tech companies can enforce specific rules to ensure that we are protecting those users, and so users don't have to come up with it on their own just by hearing Secure Our World. And I think that's so cool that we're seeing a lot of signatories right now for the CISA pledge, and maybe you'll talk about this too, because this is exactly what I'm talking about. I want to see security by default. I want to see private institutions, tech companies, come together and say, you know what? We need to make it really obvious when a user is reusing their password. We're going to integrate with something like Have I Been Pwned to alert the user if their password is compromised. Or, you know what, we're really gonna make it obvious when you don't have multi-factor authentication. We're gonna make it a little obnoxious to use the site in an unsafe or insecure way. So I love to see the public and private partnerships continue to expand, so it's not just a user thinking, what do I need to do? What did I hear in Walmart? But it's when you go to a specific website, it's obvious when you got it wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on that, we also want to shift it so it's secure by demand. So the customer is asking for it at the end of the day as well. Because I think when we start to see that shift, I think that's when we'll know we've really moved the needle.
I love that.
And I think we're actually starting to see that. And that's what PSAs help drive too. I think it's cyclic, right? As people get more information, they start to want more from their technology providers, and they're like, why don't you have multi-factor authentication by default? Why isn't this on here? And when people start to realize their power in terms of driving the market, we will see a lot more change. And that empowerment piece continues to be a message, because quite frankly, the users are the most powerful player in this dynamic. They just don't know it yet. Many of them just don't know it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's so cool. I'm excited.
So, okay, I'm going to signal for you. This is the last question. And then the teaser, we're going to show the new PSA. And also, we have a couple minutes for questions from the audience if people want to come up with questions. So, last question for you guys. The people at this conference are obviously well aware of the risks and the cybersecurity precautions to take, but can you give them advice on how they can share that knowledge and motivate family and friends to be cyber aware?
So I would say watch our PSAs because they're fun and engaging, and I think it will start to bring to the forefront kind of the issues and what we're trying to do.
I love that. Yes, watch CISA's PSAs. And there's 3 things that you all already know, but your family and friends are probably going to ask you questions about. Number 1, what do I need to do to make sure that I don't get tricked with a deep fake? What do I need to do? I would say be politely paranoid. Use 2 methods of communication to confirm that people are who they say they are. If you get a call and it matches the caller ID, we can spoof that. That's easy to do. And make sure that if you get that call and they're asking for money, sensitive data, or anything else sensitive, that you verify that person is who they say they are with another method of communication before sending the money or any other sensitive request. Number 2, turn on multi-factor authentication. And number 3, use a password manager. It's going to keep you safe. You're going to make sure that you're not reusing your passwords. And then you can watch any PSAs that we have for CISA or any of my live hacking demonstrations with Rachel Toback on YouTube for totally free to show them and demonstrate how that risk could actually play out in their personal life.
Don't just watch them, share them. Make it a part of
Share
your
them.
conversation. Actually talk to people about this. Be equipped with the very tangible skills that people should employ to protect themselves. But make it an everyday conversation. When the thing comes up about someone's Instagram getting hacked, say, oh, this is in context. This is what you could do. This is how you could prevent that. This is what you should tell your friend. Really making it relatable and action-oriented, and then post it on Facebook or Twitter or Twitch or whatever you use.
When people make it fun, it feels like Mr. Robot. It's not scary. It's exciting, right?
Yeah, completely agree.
Okay, are we ready?
Yeah,
We're ready.
let's do it.
Yeah, and as Erin's going to come up and hit play, so we've focused our program around 4 key behaviors. So updating your software, implementing MFA, having strong passwords, and always when I'm on the spot, I forget the 4th one, and identify and report phishing. I always forget the phishing. I know, Bob always helps me here.
Yes! I'm Joan the Phone, here to show you 4 easy ways to stay safe online. Come on. We can secure our world when you choose your passwords. Make them strong. Use a password manager to help you along. But don't just use a password alone. Get a call, get a text, or a code on your phone.
MFA really works!
We can secure our world. When it's time to update an app, don't you hesitate. Do it ASAP.
Just like that.
Watch out for offers too good to be true.
What?
It's probably someone trying to take advantage of you.
Hey, that's fishy.
Let's report it. Install updates. Make better passwords. Think before you click. Use multiple factors. That's how we can secure our world. Learn more at CISA.gov/secure-our-world.
There we go. All right, we might have time for 1 or 2 questions if folks have any.
Feel free to come forward, use the mic if you can. Any questions?
Or you are all so wowed by the PSA? Here we go.
Hello, thank you guys for your time. My name's Andrew. I'm a recent graduate from Grand Canyon University. One of my favorite quotes is, "You don't hack the computer, you hack the person." So I love the education, or the cyber awareness education. How do you make sure that this, so you can send out all the messages and you can have people talk about it. How do you make people actually do it? How do you make the message stick?
So it's a great question. One of the things we've been trying to do is use like a 70s, 80s style PSA so that it resonates with individuals, and again, creating the content for that age group of 26 to kind of 58 so that they will then help with kind of older adults, young adults, to make those behavioral changes. But this is where we are working with a lot of nonprofits because they have opportunities. CISA can't do everything. We have a very specific role in this space, so really working with the nonprofit community to help kind of get a better understanding of the behavioral change and the impact that it is having.
Capitalize on a crisis. I mean, this is one-to-one, but when someone in your life has an incident or an issue, use that as an opportunity to really push this information. Also, we have to start early, so that conversation that started by the PSA, hopefully parents are taking that and teaching their kids and grooming them to really understand responsible technologies and how to protect themselves. Those are two really good ways.
Yeah, cybersecurity is funny. It's almost like advertisement in a way. You've probably heard about multiple touch points being needed in marketing or advertisement. If you see an ad once, you're like, okay, I have no idea what that is. You see it twice, whatever, 3, 4, maybe at the 5th or 6th time, you're like, okay, I keep seeing this. What is this thing? So we have to hit people from all angles, multiple touch points. Comes up at the Super Bowl, and then they hear it at Walmart, and then they hear it when they log on to a webinar, and then it also comes at them at work or at school. We've got to hit them in many different ways so that it just becomes obvious to take the next step. And then when you have someone who can usher you through that, like a parent or a coworker or something of that nature, you're going to make that happen for yourself.
Thank you for the question. Here comes one more.
I just want to thank you guys a lot. What you're doing is great. I have had a parent who did all the wonderful things that is available, and they did protect themselves with MFA, but their carrier lets them down. What is being done to enforce carriers to identify the caller as being the real caller before someone takes their SIM and takes over their phone and then their bank account?
Yeah.
Is anything being done?
I have a lot of thoughts on this.
Regulations currently for this problem, because that's the easiest way to get around MFA.
It's very scary, yeah. First and foremost, I'm so sorry that happened to a loved one of yours, and moving them from something like SMS two-factor to even something free like app-based multi-factor authentication, like Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator is a great next step to prevent those issues. But SIM swapping is a major problem. It's a major issue. I'm working with a lot of carriers right now to help them get up to date with the methods of verifying identity through customer support interactions. That work is being done, but as you know, things are quite slow. Something that I do recommend that a user can take that many users don't know is something called a SIM lock. So you can set up a special PIN code that locks down your SIM so that you can't get it SIM swapped or stolen from you in a customer support interaction. I'm so sorry that happened, and I'm looking forward to a world where it doesn't.
The carriers still, even if you don't get the PIN right, they'll still allow it.
It's a massive problem.
That's where I was saying, is there any regulation being added?
The regulation has not been able to keep up with the massive attacks that we're seeing out there, unfortunately. Yeah, I hope to see it change very soon.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's so informative. My question about, is there any efforts nationwide has been done to measure the level of cybersecurity awareness? Is there any advice in this regard to establish a baseline to for the cybersecurity awareness on the nation level, especially for the public?
So this is our effort, is the Secure Our World program. We were trying to take this nationwide. That's why we did AdVise last fall and this winter. We'll be doing some more this summer. And this is where we use our partnerships with the critical infrastructure community, with nonprofits, to have them help us really spread the word, because we can't be everywhere. And so we are using the voluntary partnership model that CISA was built on to help get this message out with various communities.
And there are complementary efforts like the promulgation of cyber skills in schools from K through 12 and in higher education. Those efforts make folks aware of technology and equip them with the skills to act on the things that we're talking about.
Fantastic. Well, with that, if you'll help me thank the panelists today. Oh, I'm sorry, Mark, were you going to ask a question?
I was just gonna, no, thank you guys, the ladies, the superheroes on the stage. Round of applause. Thank you so much for your contributions, your service, and helping to keep us all safe. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.